Hello, 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 hello.
Sup?
Just doing my thing, man. Starting a Monday off right by doing work, doing the classic 9 to 5 grind. Yeah, it's the American life, man.
Yeah, right there with you. And today was a little grindier than usual, but somehow, some way, we're here. We made it through.
Indeed, man. Indeed. What did it? Like we work so hard to just get by and sustain a an acceptable standard of living. Wouldn't it be nice if things were different?
Don't talk.
And welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on all sides of planet Earth. And the way we measure that distinction is we travel from Ukraine and we go to Uganda, but we take the long way around. Ladies and gentlemen, this podcast is called Hey, Listen to This. And it is hosted by two dashingly good-looking men who share the same middle name. I'm the one. I am the only. I am the one who, I'm kind of feeling the Christmas season coming upon us before you know it. Ryan James Kearns.
And I'm the one, the only, the I feel you on that, except maybe stop with the Mariah worship all of a sudden, Matthew James Durzik. And for those of you wondering what it is we do here on Hey, Listen to This, it is right there in the title, essentially. What we do is we take a music album, listen to it, and then we come together and discuss what our favorite songs were, what our least favorite songs were, what we liked, what we didn't like, what we thought stood out, what we thought could have been improved upon. And at the end of each episode, we give a rating, we give an album recommendation, and throughout all the merry while, we have a good time. Speaking of which, Ryan, last time we talked about a full album, what did we talk about?
So we talked about the debut album from Mr. Brad Paisley, and that album was called Who Needs Pictures? And turns out I need pictures, according to my feelings about that album there. But, for those of you who want to know my full thoughts and feelings about said album, you know what to do. You're an educated person. Just to scroll back one and click play on that episode. Take a, almost like a 2-hour detour before starting this episode. I guess it's highly recommended, or maybe you could do it after this episode. I don't care. Your body, your choice.
Yeah, that episode was an interesting one because I thought it was going to be a little less contentious than it turned out to be. But even then, in our contention, we still had a few pretty intense moments. And again, to all the farmers out there, it's okay. It's fine. But with that in mind, we are now turning to one of Ryan's selections, another part in his mini-series. And for those keeping track, and for the record, we have been, this is our 100th full-length episode of Hey, Listen to This. Not our 100th review, but our 100th full-length episode.
We did it, man. We did it. We had 100 episodes up and 100 episodes almost down. I mean, we have to dive into this episode of the album that we're reviewing this week. But I'm excited, man. I'm so excited.
I am too, because I know what album we're going to be talking about. You know what album we're going to be talking about. And chances are anybody who's clicked on the link probably already knows what we're going to be talking about. But if by some chance they are in the backseat of a car or have their blinders on and haven't read any text as to what it is they are hearing, Ryan, explain what it is that we'll be discussing today on Hey, Listen to This.
So today on Hey, Listen to This, we are going to be talking about probably one of the biggest albums that came out of the late 60s, or the 60s in general. And that album that we're going to be talking about is Pet Sounds. And that album was done by the Beach Boys, released in 1966. Now, for those of you who are like, whoa, whoa, I was just born 2002. I don't know what a Pet Sounds is, or even if I want to make myself feel a little bit older, oh, I was just born 2013, and oh, what is a Beach Boy? Well, ladies and gentlemen, and children of all ages, let this old man tell you what is a Beach Boy and what is a pet sound. Wow, that's a weird statement, but we're going with it. So, just doing a brief overview though, because I don't feel like we need to go too hard in the paint for the Beach Boys as a whole. But they were an American rock group formed in Hawthorne, California, in 1961. The original lineup consisted of brothers Brian, Dennis, and Carl Wilson, and their cousin Mike Love, and their friend Al Jardine. And what made them notable was their vocal harmonies, adolescent-oriented lyrics, and musical ingenuity. So you think about California Girls, Good Vibrations, they're big songs, A Good Time, with some musical quirks in there. That's basically their bread and butter. For if I had to define their sound by one song in general, it would definitely be Good Vibrations through and through. Probably one of their most one of their, if not their biggest song ever. The group themselves they drew on music from older pop vocal groups, you think about your 1950s rock and roll, black R&B, to essentially create their unique sound. And under Brian's direction, they often incorporated classical or jazz elements in unconventional recording techniques and innovative ways, which we're going to be discussing about here today with Pet Sounds. And so with the album itself that we're talking about here today, Brian Wilson, well, first of all, for those of you who do not know, Mr. Wilson did pass away this year. So, this is another legacy review in terms of reviewing a album from an artist, a member of a specific artist who has passed away within the past year. But at the sake of going down a rabbit hole, vamping on that. So with Pet Sounds, specifically getting back to this album, Brian wanted to make a complete statement. And he was really inspired to make this album after hearing the Beatles' Rubber Soul, which was released in 1965. He believed that album basically had no skips, no filler tracks, so he wanted to challenge himself to create such an album from his own group. And yeah, that's basically kind of a brief overview of who the Beach Boys were, what is their sound, and the album that we're talking about here today. Now, before I give my background on the Beach Boys, Matthew, I'm going to turn it over to you. What is your experience with the Beach Boys? Are you a fan, or are you a hater? Are you more I'm a land boy, not a beach boy?
No. Especially with today being the first weekday in daylight savings time, I could definitely go for some beach right now. But at the same time, the Beach Boys, I've always appreciated what they have done. I started listening to them the way most people from our generation probably did, which was through mediums that their parents allowed. Usually it would be something like oldies radio, where you would hear, songs like Fun, 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 Little Deuce Coupe, California Girls, Surfing USA, all their old big hits that preceded this album. And it wasn't until much later, probably until I was in high school, that I started to notice that, hey, there's this album called Pet Sounds, which is critically acclaimed, and so much so that it ranked at number 2 on the Rolling Stone 500 Greatest Albums of All Time list. And I was like, okay, well, I at least know a couple songs off this album because they were singles, particularly Sloop John B and Wouldn't It Be Nice. And so I was like, okay, give this a listen, check it out. And so I believe I got it for Christmas one year, apropos enough, considering our intro. And yeah, it has been an album that I have listened to several times over the course of the last couple of decades. for reasons that we will get into. And after that, I sort of kind of left it at that with the Beach Boys. I didn't go too far deep into their other Discogs until probably this year, because I did pick up one of their later albums, Beach Boys Love You, on vinyl. Also took a listen to Surf's Up the other day. So their latter Pet Sounds work is interesting, but all of it kind of stems from what this album is. But I'm going to leave it at that for now because I don't want to spoil too much more. Ryan, I will throw it back to you. What is your experience with the Beach Boys?
So my experience with the Beach Boys, it basically like stems from like like two basic components. Component A is like you introduced to the group through their singles, through parental means of like them like having it on the radio or having it on CD, and as one does when you go to the beach and you are in like a gift shop at Myrtle Beach, you see the Beach Boys, and you're like, oh, hey, look at that. Let's pick up that CD. And a lot of the songs that you mentioned or in your background about the Beach Boys and your relationship with them, I'm familiar with as well, like Surfing USA, California Girls, and I mentioned Good Vibrations at the top of my overview of the group themselves. So obviously aware of those big singles. Never really dove into any of their albums, even knowing that Pet Sounds is as critically acclaimed as it is. For me, I always associated this album here specifically with, being like a Rolling Stones coded album. What I mean Rolling Stone, I mean not like Mick Jagger and Keith Richards and those men who like to paint it black. I'm talking about the magazine Rolling Stone, where they worship Bob Dylan, Bruce Springsteen, and anything classic rock from the 60s and 70s. So I always considered Pet Sounds as well, maybe one day. Well, turns out today is that day.
Well, what a day it is. That is a little surprising that you haven't quite dug into this album yet, but I'm excited because your emotions toward this album are probably going to be a bit more raw than mine. Also, I kind of love the idea of the Rolling Stones trying to make their own version of Pet Sounds. Again, not going to get too much into my thoughts on Pet Sounds, but I will say this. If the Rolling Stones try to make something this deep and this introspective and this self-reflective and this self-loathing, they would probably disappear up their own ass. So I don't think the Rolling Stones are going to do that anytime soon. But that's aside the point. Yeah, I say we've covered the bases pretty well. Because again, the Beach Boys are just one of those bands where you either know them or you don't, I would say. And granted, Pet Sounds is a little bit of a different beast, but that is a beast we are here to tackle. So, Ryan, I say we waste no more time and tackle this beast. Tackle these beasts, these pets, and their sounds. With the opening track called Wouldn't It Be Nice? The floor is yours, my friend.
Thank you. And wouldn't it be nice? What a way for the album to kick off. With this and God Only Knows, those are basically the only two tracks that I knew off of the album before diving into it fully for the review purposes for this episode here. But with Wouldn't It Be Nice, it's a fantastic way to kick off the album. I feel like this song, as cliche as it is, the kids would say, it's all gas, no brakes. I feel like the song is basically mostly chorus with how big it is. If you really think about it realistically, you get those moments in between the main sections where it's just it almost feels like a bridge and it's just getting you to the next big moment. So I love that. It's an excellent way to kick off the whole record. And drilling down into different other elements about the track here that I do like, that little bouncy riff that you get right out of the gate from the harp is an excellent touch, and you hear that riff throughout the whole song. And throughout this review, we're going to be, talking about different instruments that are utilized throughout these different tracks here. And for me, it was an absolute joy going to Wikipedia for the the personnel for each individual track, because like for me that's an incredibly nerdy thing that I absolutely do love. And I'm like, oh wait, hold on, I gotta have like a guessing game of what this is. And like, I discovered some instruments actually do exist, which we will talk about later on in this review. But like here, it's pretty obviously that riff that I was talking about was coming from a harp. So excellent touch there. And also, moving away from that harp, the vocal harmonies that you hear throughout the song are absolutely excellent. And it is like those vocal harmonies are basically a trademark of the Beach Boys sound as a whole. So like they execute that perfectly. And like in terms of what this song is basically about, like I feel like for a lot of these songs I don't really need to dive too much into the weeds about like, oh, this is what the meaning is of this song or this song. Like a lot of the stuff is pretty cut and dry, with Wouldn't It Be Nice specifically being about like, love and like, but through the lens of like capturing a youthful spirit. You think about the lyrics, like, wouldn't it be nice if we were older and we wouldn't have to wait so long? Like, for those of you who have experienced high school, and for those of you who haven't experienced high school, and if you're in middle school listening to this, well, cool, thank you. But like, you can absolutely identify with that feeling. Like, it can transport you back to your high school days whenever you had your first, like, big love, and you're like, yeah, it would be nice if we were older and then we can live together. Like, that is this song to a T. So the way that they're able to capture that spirit and that emotion is fantastic. Only other thing I gotta say about Wouldn't It Be Nice is, I mean, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's obvious with a track like this, because it's really like, popular and it's really well known throughout the, music history landscape. But yeah, Wouldn't It Be Nice did land in my top 3 favorite tracks off the whole record. And I am placing it firmly at position 2. It's my second favorite track off the whole record.
Very nice, very nice. My thoughts on Wouldn't It Be Nice? They do mirror yours quite a bit. First of all, that opening with the harp, it's not just the nice lilt of the harp that makes this an easy track to get into, but then all of a sudden you get that powerful drum from Hal Blaine, one of the most, if not most, accomplished drummers in the studio scene of all time. Like, if you ever heard the song Be My Baby by the Ronettes, he's the guy who drums on that, and that's just the tip of this massive iceberg that he has in his career. But this album is one of his lasting legacies, and just that BAM that opens into, like you say, the big chorus. I've never thought of it that way, but you nailed the analysis. It doesn't feel like there's any verses to this song, because the verses themselves feel like choruses, and the quote-unquote choruses feel like bridges, and it all just feels so fresh and upbeat and unrelenting without being aggressive. It's perfectly executed. And as you mentioned, there are a lot of instruments on this track, and some of them, I just want to name out some names. I already mentioned Hal Blaine, Carol Kay on bass, Larry Knechtel on tack piano, Jerry Cole on guitar, and I would say the secret weapon of this track, at least the main part of it, which is Carl Fortina on the accordion, providing that sort of like bounciness that this track has with his accordion part. You mentioned the vocals being beautiful, and I do agree that the harmonies are great, but I also want to give a shout out to Brian Wilson, because not only does he sing his ass off on this song, he also matches the optimism of his lyrics. He matches the optimism of, hey, wouldn't it be nice if we were older? He matches that youthful spirit. He matches that longing for something greater. And this is going to be a theme we go throughout the entire album with, where the lyrics, as simplistic as they occasionally are, okay, maybe mostly are, fit the melody and the music so perfectly, or perhaps vice versa, because Brian Wilson, again, has orchestrated this song to fit that mold of youthful energy, and it works so well. And one last thing I want to say about this is that the slowdown right before the final quote-unquote chorus, verse, whatever you want to call it, is executed so perfectly because they just pull everything back and slow things down to the point where it rises back up with that chorus, and then you get the drums, and it closes out with the chorus, which, by the way, for those of you who don't know about the lawsuit behind this song, all I gotta say about it is that Mike Love sucks as a human being. I'm just gonna leave it at that. But that being said, this song, like you say, is great, and much like you, I have it in my top 3, and much like you, I have it at number 2 in my top 3. And for full disclosure, I have a top 3 and a bottom nothing.
So I'm gonna make an addendum to like one of the notes I had about the song. Again, like for me, like I'm coming at this review with a basic understanding of like what like certain instruments sound like. That bouncy riff that I was talking about, like whenever you said you were giving a shout out to the accordion, I'm like, let me dig into the personnel. So apparently there's no harp in this track. I think the bounciness that I'm hearing, though, I'm thinking it's a glockenspiel. So, fun fact, and that gives more weight to like how awesome this track is and this album as a whole. Because like you have to go into Wikipedia to figure out what is actually being like presented to you on an audio format. So, but yeah, I'm glad that you're very much there with me in terms of appreciation about this track. And I'm curious to see if we share the same favorite track and what your other like third favorite track is going to be. Like, I'm curious to see if we share the same top 3 because with an album like this, like it might be a little bit obvious, but still it's a good album nonetheless. Might be giving a little bit of a spoiler alert for the rest of the review here. And I didn't know how much Mike Love sucks as a human being, and maybe we can go a little further into the paint with that with a track later on in this review. But for all intents and purposes, with progressing this review into the next track here, Matthew, the floor is yours. Are you ready to still believe in me?
I was wondering how you're going to land that plane, and you landed it quite well. You Still Believe in Me, track number 2, and once we get into the first few notes of this song, you realize that the optimism that Brian Wilson expressed in Wouldn't It Be Nice is a fleeting optimism, because this song, while it does ultimately share a optimistic viewpoint as its center with, the phrase, "You still believe in me," they're the reasons why he's saying still proves that this is a relatively volatile relationship that he is discussing in this song. And he starts with the line, "I can very much tell that I'm not where I want to be." And you're just like, oh, okay, so we're going from wouldn't it be nice to, oh, this guy is not happy with where he's at, but he is happy with who he's with. And that really is basically the gist of the song from a lyrical standpoint. Musically, though, first of all, the harmonies that you get, once again, are executed wonderfully and beautifully. And again, Brian Wilson, very accomplished in making sure that his bandmates, his fellow vocalists, his fellow blood is singing just amazingly. And not only that, once again, we have a situation where the music matches the tone of the lyrics, because while this is a warm song and has a warm sentiment, it does have a bit more of a minor melancholy type feel to it that is very much matched in the music. Particularly the fact that this is in a minor key. You have this very percussionless, very string-based backing. and the harmonies basically double as its own string section if you think about it. And then towards the end, you get these sort of almost like a chorus in the round type of ending where they sing the tonal melody and they just go up and down, lilt in and out. With one weird exception, that being that for possibly the first time in the history of pop music, we have a bicycle as a musical instrument. Particularly how they decide to use the little ring horn and the honk honk. And I mean, I know I'm saying this in rather infantile ways, but that's what you hear on the track. You hear the honk honk and the shing shing of the bike. And you're just thinking, what on earth possessed Brian Wilson to do this? And why does it sound so good? And I think the reason he did that was, one, he could. Two, it plays into a theme, particularly of like California living or beachside living, is that no matter how sad you are, there's always something happening by you. There's always something going on as you're feeling sad. So it doesn't matter if you're just sort of walking face down, hands in pockets, shuffling, through the ground. If someone's going to pass you on a bike, that's what life sounds like. Life sounds like a bicycle every once in a while. So maybe it's that. Maybe it's a reflection of the joy that he wants to have, sort of the youthful energy from Wouldn't It Be Nice. But in any case, this song is great, but not great enough that it goes in my top 3. But it is great enough that it goes into what I would consider the great song bucket. Yes, there is going to be a great song bucket for this episode, and this is not going to be the only song in there.
Man, life sounds like a bicycle sometimes. I feel like that needs to be the title of my autobiography when I eventually become rich and famous one day. But anyways, yeah, so I agree with you that this is definitely not a top track for me either, but it is a great song. And I'm going to highlight a couple of things here. I'm going to expand upon one of the things, coming right out of the gate. You talk about the strings that you hear throughout this track here. And for me, I was immediately kind of taken back by the plucked piano strings that you hear throughout the track. For me, excellent touch. It sounds very good. And it according to the liner notes on Wikipedia, it's a joint effort between Tony Asher and Brian Wilson. So shout out to both of them. Creating such a nice texture with the song here. And to your comment about why is Brian Wilson utilizing a bicycle horn for this track here? Why does it sound so good? You definitely answered it right there within your own thoughts about this track, because you can. And for me, it's basically this track here is I almost want to say a flex, because yes, with You Still Believe in Me, you think about the lyrical content of the song, and the lyrical content being this guy who's just very down on himself, but definitely still appreciates the fact that his significant other is still there for him, still believes in him, because that's what love does at the end of the day. You still believe in the person even in their darkest moments. So yeah, but for me, as much as I tend to be a little bit of a lyric head, it's within the song composition that I find a lot of joy within this track here. And one thing I'm gonna highlight to just illustrate that is oftentimes in music and reviews that we've done, the vocals are basically just doing straight lines, they might do the traditional up and down, traditional stuff, right? Here the vocals are almost utilized as their own instrument. And that might be a weird statement to make, but hear me out. If you, dear listener, have never listened to this track, pause the pod right now, listen to the vocal line that is coming right out of the gate. You're gonna know what I'm meaning here, because they're doing a very interesting thing tonally. Like, it's not traditional, it's not conventional, but I'm here for it 10 times out of 10. I love it, man. Vocal harmonies here are excellent as usual. Shout out to the Beach Boys for just executing such nice vocal harmonies. And yeah, another bit of instrumentation that I did enjoy is the clarinets, and like we get a contra clarinet, we got and then we got a couple, like, regular clarinets and a bass clarinet. Like, oh my goodness, like that for me, being a at one point a clarinet player in my lifetime, like, I dig it. I always identify with, like, the sound of my people, or, like, my upbringing on the musical instrument, like, playing landscape there. But yeah, this is a fun song. I very much enjoy it.
It is a really, really good song. And I think, too, what it does, at least for the casual Beach Boys listener who may have just recognized them for their hits up to that point, they hear the bounciness of Would It Be Nice, they hear the complexity, and then they hear this song. It's like, oh, they're not joking around. Like, this is not the same old Beach Boys. This is very much a different tenant of what our ears are about to be hearing. But yeah, You Still Believe in Me is a great, great track. That being said, I am ready to move on, if you are, Ryan, to the next, which is That's Not Me.
That's not my name. No. Like, maybe the Tin Tanks actually got the inspiration for that title of that track from the song here. Who knows? If you are a member of the Ting Tings and you're listening to this podcast right now, first of all, Matt, we made it, man. We did it, Joe. Second of all, drop a comment down below and just say, hey, this is so and so from the Ting Tings. Yeah, you're right, or no, you're not right. Anyways, I digress. Moving on to That's Not Me, though. So this song here grooves pretty well. For me, it's a bit of a come down from the previous two tracks, but that doesn't mean it's like a bad track by any means. Like, I do like the overall groove of it, like, like I illustrated at the start of my discussion about the track. And once again, the biggest thing for me here is the instruments in this track. The drums are doing a very interesting beat, and they're countered by the bass. So, like, specifically, Dennis Wilson and Brian Wilson are like doing a very good, interplay with those two instruments right there. So shout out to them for creating such a nice instrumental texture for me to dive into. And one thing I want to shout out about That's Not Me, and like maybe like the whole album as a whole, like the vocals are produced so well. Like, they're very much clean sounding. They're right in your face, but not like overpowering. And also, like, like all the other tracks, like the previous two tracks that we talked about so far, vocal harmonies are tight here. And yeah, essentially, I had a little bit of a hard time diving into like the meaning of this track here, because like one interpretation that I found out about this track is it's about discovering yourself by leaving your lover in your hometown behind. But it just seems like, I don't know, there's several moments lyrically that contradict it. So I think I'm just going to just say that this song is basically about discovering yourself. For me, this might be like a little bit of an album track, because like, yeah, the grooves are pretty effective, the vocals are nice, and I do enjoy the instrumentation, but in comparison to a lot of the other tracks that we have off this album, I mean, it's fine. It gets the job done. Yeah.
I'm probably slightly higher on this track than you are. It's not a top track for me by any means, but I feel like there are a little bit of nooks and crannies that do elevate this track to what I would consider to be at least a good track. Not a great track, but a good track. First of all, Mike Love doesn't completely suck. Because his vocal performance on this track is very good. I will give him credit where credit is due. You mentioned Brian and Dennis Wilson doing a great job on bass and drums, and I do agree with that wholeheartedly. But to me, the secret weapon of this track is the other Wilson, which is Carl. He is on background vocals and he is on guitar, and I think his little counters with Mike Love's vocal, particularly right before the outro, are just mwah. And also his guitar playing on the outro, very much mwah. Very good stuff. And once again, I think the key to this track is, like you said, lyrically, it's not very deep as far as what it stands for. I mean, it could be about a relationship, but it mostly is about discovering yourself, I would think. And I think the way that Brian particularly counters the keys between the parts of the song where you get the main melody of da 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 da, that's not me, and the part where he talks about going to the city. He realizes that, sometimes trying to discover yourself can be hard, and making that journey to find yourself leaves you less empty than what you had before. And there's a lot of confusion with that. Again, what I think the keys that he chose for this particular piece of music worked out so perfectly, because particularly at the end, whenever you get the organ with just the drums and the guitar, which, by the way, the organ on this track is like superb. The way that it just feels very sparse and very unforgiving, I think, is a really, really nice touch. So again, That's Not Me is not quite as good as the first two tracks, but I still think it's a really good track, and once again showcases the modicum of what Brian Wilson's trying to do with this album.
And I agree with you, man. And maybe, well, I don't know. I need to be okay with the fact that, like, not every track off of here is going to blow my pants off. Like, they're good in their own right, and there's a lot of, like, nooks and crannies that you can enjoy. Like, it's like its own English muffin, if you want to, like, use a food metaphor there. But yeah, I'm glad that you do enjoy this track. A little bit more than me. Maybe I'll go back to the track at a later time, or when I'm, like, revisiting this album, like, 7 months from now, and be like, you know what? Yeah, I could dig That's Not Me, but I am me digging That's Not Me.
Fair enough. But yeah, no, That's Not Me is a simple track, and I think the only other notable thing about it is the fact that, unlike the first two songs, which had a lot of session musicians, and a lot of the others are going to as well, this one was mostly, if not entirely, done by the Beach Boys themselves. Granted, there was probably some overdubbing because science, but at the same time, I think except for three guys, it was all the Beach Boys on this track, which is impressive considering, even though it's not as complex as the first two, it definitely feels as part of that mold.
So, like, without any further ado, I can't really think of an organic, like, segue here. Are you ready to talk about the next track, which is ironically called Don't Talk, Put Your Head on My Shoulder?
It is a bit ironic that we're going to be talking about a song called Don't Talk, but that is what we are going to do, and I take joy in that because, man, first of all, this song is pretty much an inverse of the last song. I had just talked about how the last track was very much Beach Boys performing all their own instruments. Here, the only Beach Boy is Brian Wilson on vocal, and that's it. Everybody else is out to lunch, taking a break, whatever you want to consider, because here is basically where Brian Wilson tries to emulate Paul McCartney's Yesterday, which I know it's by the Beatles, but let's be real, Paul McCartney and strings, that's what that song is. And much like that, this song is Brian Wilson and strings. Many different strings. And the bass work on this track, particularly from Lyle Ritz and Carol Kay, is just some of the best bass work I think I've ever heard on a pop song. Like, especially whenever Brian sings Let Me Hear Your Heartbeat, that little boom, 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 boom. It's just like, oh, like I'm not even like that much of a bass guy, but when I hear a good bass, it's like amazing. And the bass on here is just absolutely phenomenal. And I'm not sure whether that's Carol Kay on the electric bass or Lyle Ritz on the upright bass, but whoever's doing it, or maybe they're both doing it, it just comes across so well. And Brian himself sings really well on this track too, because here we get a song where it's kind of right there in the title, Don't Talk, Put Your Head on My Shoulder. He sings about how I could hear the, things in your sighs. And he realizes that there is just this moment of exhaustion, this moment of frustration, this moment of I'm not sure what to think or what to say that some relationships deal with. And Brian is saying, listen, let's not talk about this. Let's not try to make sense of all this. Let's just be in the moment. Let's feel this thing out. And, the idea of not talking with your lover and just having them rest on your shoulder while they feel your heartbeat, like that is such a magical ideology of just the human experience that is just so comforting and romantic and very spiritual in that regard. And the strings from the Sid Sharp Sextet complement the performances on this song very wonderfully. You do get the slight bit of percussion with Hal Blaine writing that ride cymbal, and that's it. It's a very floaty, very almost akin to something like Smoke Gets in Your Eyes or I Only Have Eyes for You, a couple of classic doo-wop songs. I think that's kind of what Brian Willis was trying to go for, mixed with a little bit of Yesterday. And in any case, it sounds really, really good. Now, full disclosure, there are a lot of songs on this album that could have been my third entry into my top three. It was pretty much a dogfight between a lot of songs, but the more I think about it, the more I'm going to go with this song to be put in my top three at number 3.
Fair enough, man. And like your description about the song made me think about one of the first reviews that we did, which was Yankee Hotel Foxtrot by Wilco, and my love for the what I would consider to be one of my favorite songs of all time, Jesus Etc., with it being a perfect love song. And your description about just hey, let's just be in the moment. Let's just comfort each other, not try to solve anything. Let's just be there for each other. Like that is an encapsulation of love to its core. So excellent job by you for pointing that out. Kudos. It made me appreciate the song even a little bit more. Not so much to bump my third favorite track out of the locked in spot that I have for it at the moment. But I still appreciate it. And I do agree with you that there's a lot of songs off this record that could easily be a third favorite track. But diving into moments within Don't Talk, Put Your Head on My Shoulder that I did appreciate as well. Like the one section that you highlighted where Brian's saying listen to my heartbeat or listen to your heartbeat. I think they're complemented on the verses 1 and 2. It changes up the end line there. That moment that you're highlighting where you hear that bass line and the instrumentation and just how the strings swell. It is so solid. And I absolutely love music and bands when they realize that, hey, let's let this moment linger. Let's consider the context of the lyrics. Let's allow this moment to breathe. So absolute beauty and perfection there. Really can't touch on too much more than you already highlighted within your dissection about the track. Just for me, I just very, very much appreciate the song in terms of composition and feel. It's a good song through and through. And the whole song basically plays almost like a lullaby from an overall feel. And when I'm talking about a feel, you get this kind of sinking, syrupy kind of feeling with the vocals and the instrumentation, and I do very much appreciate that. I agree with you, even outside of that moment that I highlighted with the instrumentation and just allowing that moment to breathe. Like the bass, the line that they're doing there is very, very solid. I do like the splashes of piano and strings that you hear throughout the track. Always a sucker for moments like that. I'm always a fan of that on an instrumental palette front. So yeah, like I basically hinted at the start of my thoughts about Don't Talk. It's not a favorite track of mine, but I very much appreciate what Brian Wilson and the gang have cooked up with this track here.
It is a wonderful track. It is a amazing performance for Brian Wilson. Again, there is a bit of a polarization that there are several tracks, this one in particular, that don't have a lot of Beach Boys on it per se, and how could it be a Beach Boys song if there's only one Beach Boy? But in a sense, sometimes you got to revolutionize like that, and we would find that with later stuff from the likes of the Beatles, the Who, and heaven knows who else. But yeah, I am ready to parachute over to the next track. I don't know why I chose Parachute, but we're going with it. And that is I'm Waiting for the Day.
Haley Williams would be very proud of you, man, for that reference there. But like in terms of like my thoughts about I'm Waiting for the Day, like once again we get a very interesting song, and like kind of like how I thought about That's Not Me. Like this song here grooves, but I like the groove that's like going on here a lot more. Things just groove here so hard, and like that groove that I specifically want to highlight. It occurs after the like the title of the track is sung, where I'm waiting for the day that you can love again. And after that, like the groove hits so hard. I do love the percussion and how the flutes basically work within that groove. Like also like I never thought I would ever like articulate the phrase. I love how hard the flute grooves within a song, but the year of our Lord 2025 has brought us many strange journeys, man. So I'm here for it, man. Shout out to flute players out there. You guys are the real ones. So outside of the groove that I highlighted, and I do enjoy about this track so much. I do like the counterpoint to that groove though, with the beautiful strings section and the sincere vocals. Like that kind of yin and yang approach is just so good, and it basically like I almost want to say it's like a compositional flex from the Beach Boys, but I enjoy the flex not so like nonetheless, man, because like sometimes when people are flexing and like they're showing off their muscles, well, they deserve it, man. They worked hard for those muscles, and for here, I enjoy that metaphorical flex here, and like. And also, one other thing I want to highlight about the track on the composition front is just the way that the outro hits with the groove just writing out the track. But like now, like we get the vocals mirroring the rhythm of the groove, and like for me, that was a great moment. Like it's just so good. Like I'm walking away from I'm Waiting for the Day, just thinking like, man. This song here grooves so hard. And in terms of like a core concept about this track, we're gonna revisit this track here on a lyrical front later on in the rest of the album here, because I have a fun comparison with a couple of the tracks that we have like coming up here. But with I'm Waiting for the Day, like this song is very much about being there for someone after they've been through a hard relationship and waiting for them to be ready for your love. I mean, is this like I don't know, for you, is this basically like Friend Zone the song?
That's a good question. I would have never thought of it that way. See, my interpretation of this song has always been along the lines of a man or a significant other is waiting for the other lover to break out of their funk and being like, listen, I can wait for the day where you can love again and we can go back to the joy that we had. Sort of trying to push again for that hope that was first expressed on Wouldn't It Be Nice. That would be my interpretation of this song.
Fair enough, man. So the only thing I gotta say about "I'm Waiting for the Day" is, as much as the song does, like, slap me in the face with a fish in terms of like groove and how excellent it is. It's not my favorite track off the whole record, man.
And it's not in your top three either?
It's not my third favorite track, so it's not in my top three whatsoever.
Wow. All right, so that says something that we've already broken out the fish in the face, but not enough to get in the top three. That is a sign. I think that is a sign. But before we read that sign, my thoughts on "I'm Waiting for the Day." A lot of the things you said I agree with. I think the flute does a great job. I think the song really has its strengths in that counterpoint of sounds that you were talking about. Like, you get the slower sections with the strings just sort of mellowing out and slowing things down with the vocal, but that is countered so viciously by not just the organ, which I think is one of the dominant song or sounds on this song, but also the timpani and drums that are on the song are just really just hammering things home, and creating what I would consider a carnival of sound. Like, not just a carnival of sound of how layered it is, but it almost feels like you're at a carnival. It feels like you're on a midway. It feels like you're, hearing bells and whistles go off. There's, a merry-go-round in the back. People are getting cotton candy and throwing balls at milk bottles. Like, it is just a very carnivalistic sound that I really appreciate. And the small moments countering the big ones is also a big part of this song. And like I said, I interpret this song as being about a relationship, and I sort of read this whole album as one long story about a relationship that's, just trying to hold on as best it can. So to me, this is about Brian looking at his significant other and being like, listen, whatever light in your eyes that we used to have for each other, I can see that it's dim, but I will wait for it to be lit back up again. So I don't know if this is what I consider friend zoning. Perhaps in another universe it might be. Granted, it was the 60s. The friend zone probably wasn't even established yet. They hadn't even torn down the Berlin Wall. Anyways, "I'm Waiting for the Day" is a great song. It goes in the great song bucket, but much like you, I do not have it in my top three either.
And that's a testament to how great this album is. Where you can get an awesome song like this, and it's not a favorite track. And I'm interested to see how our interpretations of the rest of the songs on a lyrical front play out, because how I alluded to with my thoughts about "I'm Waiting for the Day," when we get to it, we'll get to it, but I would argue that there's different people that are at play with this specific story here. But I'm gonna have my fun when I'm gonna have my fun. Until then, are you ready to go away for a while?
Yes, let's go away for a while. Oh, the song. You're talking about the song. The song "Let's Go Away for a While." It is the first of two instrumentals on this album. And I know we've talked in the past before. I could recall our Slint episode where sometimes the instrumental is there just to be an instrumental. I would say here that's not the case at all. I think both instrumentals showcase a lot of lyrical interpretation in their own right. Granted, on a surface level, this does come across as very much 60s movie soundtrack music, but it's pretty damn good soundtrack music. First of all, you get the vibraphone work by Julius Wechter that very much encompasses sort of the modern jazz sound of the late 50s and early 60s. It's sort of the motion picture orchestration that you would expect on a movie wherever they're showing scenes of transition. And that's basically what this song is. It is a transition from the drama of the first 5 songs to the weird interchange that we are about to experience at the end of side A. But the vibraphone work is very good. The strings are very good. The horns are very good. The drums by Hal Blaine are very good. And after you get through the opening part, you get the sort of twinkling part with the vibraphone mixed with a little guitar, a little bit of strings, and the percussiveness of what I think are overturned orange juice cups. We will discuss those later on. They will come back. And then it rides the outro of Wechter, who switches to timpani, and Hal Blaine trading off their little marching noises of da-da-da, ba-bum. And I think that is just a really good way of just orchestrating things. It's not a top track for me. Obviously, to pick this as a top track on this album is borderline insulting, but I still think it is a very good track in its own right.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's borderline insulting. That might be insulting to the Beach Boys themselves. Like, Brian Wilson's rolling over in his grave right now. Like, what the fuck, man? Anyway, so yeah, though, spoiler alert, this is not in my top 3. So, as much as I kind of, threw you under the bus there, I basically dodged myself throwing myself underneath the bus there. Rolling on to my thoughts about Let's Go Away for a While. I'm right there with you with the vibraphone. I do appreciate the work there. It's basically the main focus of the track, and I do appreciate how when the track does shift, the vibraphone does shift with it. Very much enjoy the track though on a composition up front, and the instrumental palette. This is based I'm curious to know if in other Beach Boys albums, post Pet Sounds or prior to Pet Sounds, are there instrumental tracks like this? Because I think that would be an interesting thing. You could definitely speak to that more than I can.
Yeah, the couple I've listened to, particularly Surf's Up and The Beach Boys Love You, I don't think there's many instrumentals on those, if at all. I think they're pretty much straightforward songs, which is kind of a shame because, again, even though this is not a top track for me and, again, is, just beaten out by full songs here, it's as far as instrumentals go, it is one of the better songs of the 60s from a rock group, I would say, because it just has that lush orchestration. And from what I've read up on, this is actually inspired by the works of Burt Bacharach. So that is, an interesting thing because I can hear it. I can hear the sort of pop sheen, the professionalistic instrumentation that Brian Wilson's going for. And I think he executed it very well. And again, the main importance of this track is that it takes us from the drama of I'm Waiting for the Day, and it goes away from that. It goes away for a while because we are about to talk about a track that very much is not thematic with this album really at all, aside from the music. So with no further ado, we are going to close out side A, Ryan, if you are ready, with ironically the biggest hit chart-wise off this album. I believe this went all the way to number 3 on the charts, which beat out both God Only Knows and Wouldn't It Be Nice in the singles category, which is weird, but we'll talk about it.
So yeah, the next track, man, Sloop John B, man. What a great what a interesting song, man. So and I just coming right out of the gate, coming at it from a factual standpoint, the song is an adaptation of a Bohemian folk song originally called the John B Sales. So yeah, I really can't dive into the lyrical context so much because this is not an original Beach Boys song, but I do like the adaptation of it quite a bit because throughout the first half of the record here so far, we've talked about Brian Wilson's ability to compose and really construct a strong instrumental palette, and the Beach Boys as their own are able to execute vocal harmonies to a T. But here, like, this song here has such a strong sense of melody. Like, you get hooked on it right away. And, like, I would dare to argue, like, it's probably the strongest sense of melody that you get throughout the whole album. And I know, I already named, Wouldn't It Be Nice is my second favorite track. But I think the melody that you get here was Sloop John B. Yeah, like the melody here is a bit stronger. So, yeah. Diving a little bit more into the song, though. The tack piano here played by Al D. Laurie, which, if I'm mispronouncing that, I apologize. I'm just a humble man who tries, I guess. So I do appreciate what's being done here, and again, it's thanks to this album here, like specifically this song here, that I'm like, wait, what's a tack piano? And am I getting that right? Let me actually Google tack piano, how does it sound? And I'm like, well, actually, no. Hey, I am getting it right. So there you go, man. I do like that element about it. So outside of the tack piano, the tempo blocks and the bass are doing a nice job countering what's going along, countering what's the tack piano is doing. And I also do appreciate the horns as well throughout this track here. And once again, like throughout many spots in the first half of this record here so far, vocals are produced very nice and the harmonies are so on point. I like the song so much that it might be a bit of a cop-out, but yeah, it's my third favorite song off the whole record.
No disrespect, man, because I will say this. It is not in my top three, but it's definitely one of those songs that could have dogfought its way into the top three with pretty much half of this album. Because you are right, the melody on this song is just magnificent, and the way that the vocal harmonies are executed, to me, I think the reason this was such a big hit, because even though it's a bit of an outlier lyrically, like it's not a song you would expect from the Beach Boys or anybody, they're covering a bohemian folk hymn. They're talking about, being on this ship and, the first mate got drunk and the cook threw away my grits and my corn. Like, what the hell are they talking about? But the music carries everything. The harmonies are about as Beach Boys as you could possibly get on this album. Like, it feels like a classic, like, full speed ahead rocker in that regard. But at the same time, it does have that feeling, particularly in the pitter-patter percussion mixed with the full-on orchestration behind the vocals, where it has this feeling of almost like a children's song. Like, that's kind of what it feels like, is like a children's song, where, they're singing about, all aboard the captain ashore, let me go home. And that's the reason why Let's Go Away for a While was so important, because this is a big departure from the feelings of I'm in love, but I'm not sure if you are, to, hey, here's some guys on a boat. Some stuff happens. Let's find out what happens. So it is very much a bit of a break from the melancholic feel of the album, and I think it's a very welcomed one. And again, the drums sound great, the bass sounds great, the vocals sound amazing, and I can understand why it was a hit. I'd probably put this in my top 5 easy, but it's not that easy because there's a lot of songs on this album saying, wait a minute, I don't know about that. So unfortunately, Sloop John B is not in my top 3, but a really good song that I would put in the great song bucket for the record.
Is there a good song bucket in this review here for you?
I would say there's a couple songs that kind of are in the good song bucket. I'd say That's Not Me is one of them. There might be another one down the line that's sort of in that category. I would also consider maybe possibly putting Let's Go Away for a While in the good song bucket. And both of them are very good songs. I don't know if I would go as far as calling them great songs, but it's a very fine line.
So before we transition over to side 2, side B off of this album here, and dive into the back half of the record here, Matthew, I have a question that, like, ever since I was driving home from work today, I've just been dying to ask you, man.
Oh, okay. And what would that question perhaps be?
And that question would be, if the dear listener out there would, put us into the metaphorical great song bucket in terms of the podcast entertainment, bucket, for lack of a better descriptor there. And they want to help support what you and I do on a week out basis. What are some ways that they can help support, connect with, and just, basically help us grow the show so we can keep on keeping on what we do here week in, week out here on Hey Listen to This?
Well, the best way they can help us keep on keeping on is to keep on keeping on themselves. Whether or not you consider us part of your great podcast bucket just yet, the way that you can help us out is by, first of all, continuing to listen. We are on pretty much all podcast platforms of choice, whether it's Pocket Cast, Apple Music, Spotify, if you want to follow us on any of those. Also, we are on YouTube. We upload videos with our podcast on them every week. So if you prefer using YouTube Music, you can find us there as well. And again, all you have to do is look up Hey Listen to This, find our podcast reviews. We've done several going back to 2023, I want to say, is how long we've been doing this. We've been doing this for well over 2 years. And if you find us on any of those sites, do what it takes to give our algorithmic overlords a vote of confidence, whether it's giving us a 5-star review or liking, commenting, and subscribing, whatever it is that is required for that particular platform. And speaking of platforms, if you want to tell a friend about us, but you don't know which friend that might be because you haven't messaged them directly, you don't have to tell them directly. You could share it to your social media, because we're on social media. We are on Facebook, we are on Threads, we are on Instagram, we are on Blue Sky. And the username for us on any of those platforms is ttheylisten. Again, that is ttheylisten. And speaking of ttheylisten, if you want to reach out to us directly, but you do not know us directly, the way to reach us is through email at ttheylisten@gmail.com. Again, that is ttheylisten@gmail.com if you want to listen to what it is that we are doing, or if you want to reach out to us directly, whether it is to give us some positive feedback, some possible advice, or perhaps recommend an album that we could do in the future, because we have done that before. We would love to do it again. And as always, to those who have done any of the things that I have mentioned so far and spread the good word of what we do here on Hey Listen to This, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We couldn't do without your help, and we appreciate it, because, again, we're not sponsored by any video games or snacks or online casinos. We're just two dudes. We're just two dudes with a pair of microphones and an unending love of music. And speaking of those two dudes, Ryan, thank you, as always, for being a wonderful co-host and helping put this pretty much where it is now. 100 full-length episodes in. Well, 99 and a half, but we're getting there.
Yeah, we are indeed getting there. Right back at you, man. I do appreciate the compliment, but you make a excellent co-host here with me, man. We definitely create quite the pair here, and the different perspectives that we bring week in, week out here, and the different kind of albums and musics, genres that we we definitely complement each other very well. So, and yeah, so without any further ado, I think we're ready to talk about the first song off of side B off of Pet Sounds, and that would be God Only Knows. Matthew, the floor is yours.
Thank you, good sir. God Only Knows, first song on side B, and yeah, man, this song. This is what many would consider to be Brian Wilson's orchestral masterpiece. Right up there, at least, with Good Vibrations, which did not make it onto an album, was released as a single, although I think it might have been on Smiley Smile. That's aside the point. Let's talk about God Only Knows. This song, first of all, the way it starts, it sounds like a sunset. Like we talked a couple weeks ago on the Doors episode about that feeling of exhaustion at the end of a sweaty summer day where you're just like caught in this like humid 90-degree haze and you just want to go home, but you can't. You're sweating and you smell when the sun's coming down. You're just like, what the hell's going on? This is like that, except the other side of the happiness spectrum. Like this is just a wonderfully, beautifully, musically inclined sunset of an opening. And the way you get the strings and the horns just creating this sunny yet melancholic feeling is just a wonderful opening. And then you get into the percussion of this song, which, for those of you wondering where I was going to bring up those orange juice cups again, they're back. They are back. And they're played by session musician Jim Gordon, who does a good job sort of, once again, creating this atmosphere of joyfulness, playfulness, and pleasantness, despite the song itself, which, in a sense, is optimistic and very much guts out of the chest onto the floor, spilling, which is very violent, but let me explain. This is a song basically where the singer, who in this case is Carl Wilson, is emulating Brian's feelings of, when you are at your best, there is nothing I would rather do than to keep you and be with you in my life. And it is very much, in a sense, a last gasp of a song if you're following this album track by track, where basically he's saying, listen, baby, I need you in my life, and I don't know who I'd be without you. God only knows what I'd be without you. And you get that along with the harmonies from him and everybody else in the band just sounding wonderful. And you get that section in the middle where they shift time, where it becomes less of a swing and more of a straightforward 4/4. And you get that instrumentation of bum 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 dun 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 dun. Like, remember, this is a band that was talking about Surfing USA not 3 years ago. And now they're doing this. Like, that is such a leap and bound of musical maturity and innovation and just brainstorming and putting it out into the world that is just a level of genius that is just absolutely insane. And then you get the build of vocals before the final chorus. And then that final chorus, the way it just shifts key changes so untraditionally, instead of just closing out like it did the first few times, and it just creates its own verse again. It is just so ambitious and so wild. And then you get that final build where you get that vocal in the round of Carl, Bruce Johnston, and Brian Wilson just trading off different vocal cues. And it just, the instrumentation keeps building and building and building. The drums are perfectly placed. The strings are perfectly placed. And it just sounds like this rousing classical moment in the history of pop music. I mean, do I have to freaking say it, man? Like, this is one of the greatest pop songs of all time. And I know it's cliche to say that because it's one thing that everybody says. There's a reason this song is considered such a great song. It's because it is such a great song. And I would consider it to be the greatest on this album, with a bullet, no questions asked. God only knows, right at number one.
God only knows that sometimes it's okay to go with the cliche pick in terms of, like, with everyone saying that this is the best song off the album, and for people like you to agree. Do I agree? Well, let's find out. Yeah, a lot of the things that you talked about with God Only Knows, I agree wholeheartedly, man. Like, I'm going to start with the fact that within its core, you talk about like your thoughts and your interpretation of the lyrics, and like my spin on the lyrics, like I'm gonna expand upon like a couple of the things that you talked about. Like it's such a good love song, and like earlier in the episode, I hinted at one of my favorite songs of all time being Jesus Etc. by Wilco. And at one point, I described that song as being a perfect love song. And I still do. But I also will say that God Only Knows is another perfect love song. And like you take lyrics, like coming right out of the gate, I may not always love you, but long as there are stars above you, you never need to doubt it. I'll make you so sure about it. God only knows what I'd be without you. So like right coming out of the gate, addressing the fact that like sometimes love isn't perfect. Sometimes we fall in and out of love with each other, but just knowing that significant other provides such a comfort for you, such a space in your life that you can just be yourself and feel secure within yourself is absolutely perfection. And further on in the track here, you get lyrics about like if you should ever leave me, well, life would still go on. Believe me, the world can show nothing to me. So what good would living do me? Like basically saying like sometimes life is a bicycle, like you hear it like alongside of you while you're depressed, but like fuck that bicycle, man. Like you're no longer with me. So yeah, like absolutely perfection in terms of on the lyrical front, and like going outside of the lyrical analysis here, just the way that the vocals sound, like they're so good, they're so smooth and lush, like it's essentially like syrup with how like Carl Wilson lingers on phrases in this, especially like with like the core message of the song being God only knows what I'd be without you. The way that he lingers on that phrase is just so good. I do appreciate that wholeheartedly. The plastic orange juice cups by Jim Gordon. What? That's such a flex, man. Like, Brian Wilson, get the fuck out of here, man. Like, what the fuck are you doing? And like, how, like, you if you mentioned this, I do apologize, but like, I don't believe you mentioned the Sleigh Bells by Hal Bain. Like, oh my goodness, the way that those counteract each other, and like, they basically are like the foundation of like the verses. Like, what? What? Who allowed you to be this, like, amazing and beautiful? Like, in terms of such odd instrumentation, like, you have no right to be this pretty, man. And, like, the one section that you highlighted with the round at the end, it really does create a nice send-off of the track. Like, I mean, do I have to say it? Like, I'm right there with you. Like I said at the start of my analysis about the track here, God only knows that sometimes it's okay to go with a cliche pick in terms of identifying what is the best song off the album. And yeah, it's there for a reason. So God Only Knows completes my top 3 at number 1, man.
Yeah, it's a great song. It's just, again, and for those of you who want to check it out, I don't know if there's a clip of it on YouTube or anywhere else, but if you could listen in on some of the because they did save a lot of the outtakes for all of the tracks off this album and a lot of Beach Boys albums before this, but just to listen to this in just sort of real time as a recorded piece of music with Brian Wilson at the controls, it is a marvel to hear. So I would highly recommend. And by the way, Ryan, thank you for pointing out the sleigh bells. I did forget about those. Which is, weird because we talked about the sleigh bells just a few weeks ago with the Stooges and how important they could be in a non-Christmas song. But if you're looking to switch up your Christmas playlist this year, along with I Want to Be Your Dog, add God Only Knows.
That's going to be one hell of a Christmas playlist, man. So, right? Oh, yeah. Oh, all right. So the next track here is I know there's an answer, and that answer is, well, the song here is pretty good. So, and a little bit like peeking behind the curtain between you and I here. Like I'm double checking myself before I wreck myself here. Well, see, this is like with here, like the first note that I have coming out of the gate with, I know there's an answer. Like I was just like, wait, this song features a bass clarinet solo, but you kind of counteracted my bass clarinet analysis with that's actually a bass harmonica. And first of all, I didn't even know such a thing existed. So okay, cool. That's a lot of fun. So, but yeah, I'm gonna defer to your judgment because you have a lot more experience with this record than I do. So this is definitely a bass harmonica solo here. So good, and like outside of the bass harmonica solo, that I was just like, wait, what? The song, like for me, for out like this record here so far, we've gotten a lot of like big like songs, intricate instrumentation, but this song here, like it's almost like a different kind of like song on its own, right? Because it almost has like a salsa groove to it, and maybe the word salsa might not be the kind of appropriate texture here, but it's the best descriptor that I could have for it. The tack upright piano makes another appearance here. Always a fan of that throughout this record, and also like I discovered what a tack upright piano is. So like that's fun. This album's teaching me stuff, man. I love it. Outside of the instrumentation, though, like the one of the other features that I did like about the song here is that the chorus just feels really big, especially with the timpani. It really highlights it very well. And basically, the song is like for me, I took the song as just basically a descriptor for finding answers about life, and you might be able to dive a little further into the backstory about this track here, but this song was rewritten. This was not the first draft of the song, and this is because of Mike Love. He voiced objections to the lyrics. Love stated in a 1993 interview that he found the original lyrics so totally offensive and nauseating that he refused to sing them. He told Wilson that he was strongly opposed to drugs such as LSD and did not wish for the Beach Boys to be associated with its culture. And just taking a quick peek here, the original like the title of the song was "Hang On to Your Ego." Unless I no, let me rephrase that. It was originally entitled "Let Go of Your Ego," and like the Beach Boys were inspired to write this after experimenting with LSD, and like there might have obviously due to my background that I was given about the track here, like there was definitely hints of LSD here, but Mike Love was just like, you know what, I'm a pearl clutching southern lady from the south, and I'm like, you know what, we don't sing that in these parts here. Oh my heavens and Betsy's, man, LSD not today, buddy. But yeah, I appreciate. I know there's an answer nonetheless. It's a good track.
Yeah, I do too, and for a lot of the reasons you mentioned. First of all, that bass harmonica. I would say the only other song I think that prominently features a bass harmonica on this level, or I would say even more successfully, is The Boxer by Simon and Garfunkel. If you know what that one solo is, where you just get that sort of, very rustly, bassy thing, that's a bass harmonica too. But back to I Know There's an Answer. This is basically a mix of two different ideas, which is one, don't do drugs, and two, are you sure you are who you really are? Because there's also a lot of parts of the song which struggle with self-identity and sort of calls other people out for, preaching what self-identity is. And basically, This is Brian saying, are you guys sure about that? I'm not sure about that, but are you guys sure about that? Because I'm not sure about that. Are you sure about that? So that's basically what this song is to a T, and it does so in a much more lyrical sense than what I just described. Vocally, Al Jardine is the lead vocalist for the majority of this track. There are a few moments where Mike Love does sing lead, but this is mostly an Al Jardine moment, and he does a really good job. Al Jardine is probably one of the more underrated vocalists in the entire Beach Boys. Like, he sings stuff like Help Me Rhonda, my personal favorite from him, which is Cotton Fields. He's a good singer. Like, he's a really good singer. And I think the other thing I'll mention about this track before we move on is that much like I'm Waiting for the Day and several others, the counteraction between the slower moments where you just get the reed instruments with a little bit of jagged guitar and bass sort of balance out the more wild moments like the hard hammering of the tack piano, the bass harmonica solo, and the choruses, which are just, again, orchestrated so well. And the way that Jardine is able to rise above that with his own vocal performance is very, very impressive. This is another one of those songs, man. Catch Me on Another Day, this could have been my number 3 favorite track, but it firmly lands in the great song bucket because, once again, Brian Wilson's just out here flexing like nobody's business.
And we're very much enjoying that flex from one reason or another. And for those of you who want to take a journey down a rabbit hole, I know that I talked about how this song was rewritten. Genius.com actually has the lyrics, to the original, draft of the song. So yeah, take a 30-second detour down that. It's actually kind of funny, seeing the original lyrics, but. Are you ready to move on from I Know There's an Answer and talk about Here Today?
Yes, I am ready to talk about Here Today. And this track is, to me, very similar in tone and timbre to That's Not Me, except a little bit more orchestrated, mainly because Mike Love is once again on lead vocals. And what's interesting is that it feels like he is like a side character in this whole album. Particularly with That's Not Me and this track, because the way he's talking about love, it's sort of from a third-person perspective, particularly when he's talking about, hey man, I know you're in love and you say you're in love, but I was once her lover and I'm just here to tell you it may not work out the way you think it's gonna, man. Which I think is interesting because for an album so dominated by Brian Wilson, and for those who don't know, Brian Wilson would eventually go on to have a decent amount of psychiatric problems. And so it almost feels like this track here feels like a voice in his head. Like he's creating a third person to be like, hey man, there's not necessarily going to be this happy ending you're thinking of, because sometimes love is here today and then it's gone tomorrow. And as simple as a sentiment as that is, the way it's executed on this track is great. Mainly for a few reasons. First of all, the harmonies once again sound great. The drums from Hal Blaine sound amazing. But what I really dug about this track more than anything else is for the sentiment of the song to be as exhausted in this story as it is. There's a lot of murkiness and a lot of changing parts. Like at one point, it's fully orchestrated with voices and drums. And then it drops back where it's just Mike Love and organ, and then the chorus comes, and it's here today, gone tomorrow. And then it gets the instrumental section, which starts very sparsely, and then for some reason goes into double time for unexplained reasons. And then it slows back down to just the organ, and then it goes with the final chorus and the outro. And to me, I think that's on purpose. I think this is Brian saying, this is the part where things are starting to set in that this may not be what I thought it was going to be. And this is the outside world telling me that, and my emotions are kind of going all over the place, where, it's big, and then it's small, and then it's double time. And you're just like, how do you feel when you realize that your worldview as you had hoped it would be is ceasing to exist in this relationship? And again, the music, I think, matches that feeling so perfectly. And again, the instrumentation, particularly the drums and the bass and the guitar, for as much as the song changes, for Carol Kay in particular to be locked in on bass as she is no small feat. Like, it is a song that changes a lot, and she's changing along with it. And so are the vocalists. It's another song that I think is a great song. It is a great song, and it goes in the great song bucket. Here Today, just good stuff.
You're absolutely here for it for Here Today, and for a lot of the reasons that you highlighted, I'm right there with you. Like, shout out to Carol Kane for that bass line. Like, for me, like, that was the, like, coming right out of the gate. Like, that was the one thing that that hooked me into my appreciation about the track, and like, also how that bass line echoes the vocal melodic line. Like, it is just so fucking tight. I love it coming right out of the gate. So I'm always a huge fan of that. And like you highlighted, like the big sections in the chorus where you get the big horns, and also, like, shout out to the Barry sax player in this track here, because you know me, I'm always a huge fan of Barry saxes, because that's very much my people right there. It's like I hear the call of my people out there, and I always answer, man. So, and yeah, the only thing I gotta highlight, like, the instrumental break that you highlighted was good. Like, it's pretty solid. But the one thing I'm gonna, like, basically kind of highlight about this track to wrap up the discussion of it is, for me, like, how I kind of hinted at the fact that with I'm Waiting for the Day that we're going to get other characters that are going to be introduced in this story with other tracks here. Like, this is the other character here, because, like, with I'm Waiting for the Day, the way that I interpreted the lyrics, they were about a guy who, quote unquote, was there for somebody through a hard relationship, may have stolen that person or convinced that person to break up with that other person. Well, ladies and gentlemen, here, like, I think we get the perspective of that other person, basically warning about the potential heartbreak that's going to occur with their now ex-lover. So I might be reading a little bit too much into it, but you know what? It's fun to read into stuff like this, and I would definitely think that the Beach Boys as a whole would love that, like, people are diving into the lyrics and the stories behind these songs so much in their album here. So yeah, the song here for me, it's very much a sister song to I'm Waiting for the Day. It's a good song, and I think the biggest thing for me, though, like how I highlighted coming out of the gate here that I did appreciate, is that bass line and how that mirrors the vocal line just so tightly. Like, it's always a pleasure for me to listen to.
It is really, really good. I mean, again, we have to remind ourselves that this is all coming from some dude's head. Like, this is coming from the mind of Brian Wilson, and he is orchestrating all of this to make sure that it sounds as grandiose and yet as melancholy and occasionally sparse as it is. And the way that a lot of these tracks ebb and flow between very, I wouldn't say empty, but very sparse and very full of sound is just an absolute masterclass in emotional and musical dynamics. So yeah, this track is just another example of that. But I am ready, if you are, Ryan, to boogie on over to the next track, which is not really a boogie song by any means, and that is I Just Wasn't Made for These Times.
Yeah, very much not a boogie song, but it's a good song nonetheless, and maybe a song that a lot of people can identify with, no matter what, quote unquote times that you're listening to this in. So Yeah, just the diving into the nooks and crannies here, the English muffin of the song here. Like you get some solid instrumentation here. I very much enjoy the upright bass and the tempo blocks. Like it definitely does create a nice sonic palette for people to enjoy, and like the layered vocals during the chorus, like that was a pretty good touch. I do like what's going on there, and just the overall vocal melodic lines, especially when they sing the title of the track, it's just so pleasant to the ear, considering how melancholic like the overall lyrics are about like just not being sure about your place in the world. Um, yeah I really don't have so much more to say about it. It's interesting towards the back half of the track here that you get like almost like a call and response dynamic, with two different languages being sung, which is interesting for me. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a good song. I don't have all that much more to say about it. I do enjoy it though.
I enjoyed it quite a bit too, man. And I think too, um, if Here Today was the world telling Brian Wilson that this world and this romantic aura of utopia that he is hoping for may not exist, this is him pretty much coming to terms with that this world may not be for him after all, which is pretty dark and rather disturbing. But at the same time, I do respect the hell out of him for having the balls to make a song like this, because it does not. I mean, in real life in general, it is not easy to uh, show your weakness, especially when it feels like there's someone about to prey on you at every moment. So for him to acknowledge that, hey, maybe things aren't working out the way I'd hoped, like that's a bold and brave thing to do in that regard. And once again, musically, everything matches, particularly the sort of murky sound of the bass with the strings, creating this sort of almost like swamp like feel, like this very like dark green texture of sound. Um, and the way that you talk about the round in the chorus, where the lead is singing "Sometimes I feel very sad," and then you get that counter vocal, like it just adds to the murkiness and the confusion that I think is expressed through the lyrics of this song, where, you know, at the end of it, Brian realizes, hey, maybe I just wasn't made for these times after all. And then you get that weird solo towards the end, which I am not sure what that instrument is. I'm not sure if it's a theremin, a clarinet, a flute, an English horn, or something or other. But it sort of has that sort of weird wobbly. Like I dug that. And then the outro, where it's just the vocals once again trading off with each other, saying, I just wasn't made for these times, with that very militaristic march of drums. Again, great song bucket. Really, really good stuff. And again, I think the biggest thing away from this song is Brian Wilson's bravery to just say, hey, I'm sad. Sometimes I feel very sad. And not a lot of rock songs do that. Not a lot of people do that.
And I feel like a lot of more people need to do that though, because like for people just listening to a song like this, I often talk about the mutual connection that artist and listener can experience, where like, hey, artist is exercising their demons, and the listener can exercise their demons alongside the artist by the means of music, and that's a beautiful thing about music, and I always love that 100%. Um, while you were doing your dive into the track, the little solo thing at the end I discovered was an electro theremin. So yeah, another flex by the compositional stylings of Brian Wilson. So shout out to him. Excellent, composition, style here, and like his instrumental palette that just was in his brain throughout this album is top notch. So, without any further ado, are you ready to sip on into the penultimate track off the record, which is indeed, ironically, the title track off the record, with the next track, which is called Pet Sounds.
Yes, yes. It is the title track. It is the penultimate track, and is the second of 2 instrumental tracks off of this album. And I'm gonna come right out and say it that this is the other song I would say goes in the good song bucket per se, because I don't quite enjoy it as much as I would Let's Go Away for a While as far as instrumentation. But the thing with each of the good songs per se compared to the great songs in the top 3 is that these good songs still have great moments in my mind. First of all, the percussion on this track is very good. There's just about no notes about that. And then you get the guitar work that's very 60s-ish. You get that sort of that wing, 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 wing. Very reminiscent of like late 50s, early 60s surf music. And this is sort of a nod back to what the Beach Boys used to do as far as their surf music days. So sort of a nice little touch to there. And even though there's not a whole lot of highlight, I will say the one thing that did get me about this track were the little instrumental stings with the horns where it goes bum, 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 and then it just keeps going. Because much like I talked about in You Still Believe in Me, there's that element of life goes on even though you don't get the big feeling of ta-da, and so many times on this track you get that feeling of ta-da, we've made it to the end, this is the big moment, but it's not. The song just keeps going. The instrumentation does not stop. And to me, there's something very, for lack of a better term, there's something very BoJack Horseman about that. Looking for the big ending and realizing there's not one on the way. So yeah, I appreciated that part of it. But aside from that, again, the instrumentation is very good, and it does serve as a nice transition track from the thematic drop of I Just Wasn't Made for These Times with the thematic drop of the final track, which we'll get to in just a little bit.
And for me, I think I'm right there with you in terms of appreciation about the track. Like it's a good track, and I do like a couple like the nice little effects here. Like the one guitar effect that you were talking about, I think it's called a Les Lyle effect, and also I had to Google that, so yeah, that's fun. And I love that. I felt obligated to like Google so much about what's going on here because I wanted to know, and like just the overall way that the guitar takes the lead here, it's pretty good. I do appreciate that, and the horn swells that you described, like I do appreciate that as well. Like just the overall like percussion feel, I do like what's going on there. If I had to be honest with you, I think I enjoy the other instrumental track here on the album, which is Let's Go Away for a While. Just a little bit more, nothing to take away from Pet Sounds as a whole. And your analysis about the track where there's not a big finish and how that's very like BoJack Horseman like that probably elevates the track's appreciation level that I have for it maybe a little bit more, because maybe that's what Brian was going for on the compositional front, being like, hey, like there's a big payoff, like this is just life, and like sometimes life is basically like a bicycle horn. It is what it is, man.
It is. But and the thing is, I have no idea if Brian Wilson did intend that, but I think at this point in the album, and obviously it being 2025, I would say he's earned the benefit of the doubt that all of these little moves that can be interpreted as such deserve that interpretation at the very least. So with that in mind, we have come to the final song off of Pet Sounds. And Ryan, the floor is yours to discuss Caroline No.
So, yeah, with Caroline No, it's a decent way to end off the album with a love song basically about a past love. And I'm not sure how I feel about it though? Like in terms of like it being like the final song, and like often in our show we put a lot of emphasis on like final songs off of LPs, like feeling like definitive statements. Like, um, for better for worse, like my go-to example is always the Tortured Poets Department with Clara Bow, and like Sabrina Carpenter's End of Her album. Like there's other reviews that we've done where like the final song feels like a definitive statement. Here, it just feels like another song. I mean, the end of the track, which I'll get to later on, definitely does feel like the end of the whole album, which is a very interesting thing. But yeah, getting into the nooks and crannies about the song though, I do appreciate the harpsichord, and how it provides a nice grounding presence in the background of the track. And also, I do appreciate the horns and the percussion in the background as well. Like the way that the vocals are just very, very, melancholic, and like just very much mirroring the emotion about like what somebody would be going through after seeing somebody that they had like feelings for years down the road, being like, oh wait, hold on, things have changed, like, and just seeing how life changes people. Like, I did appreciate that. And the background about the track here, though, like the meaning, like the origin point from it, made me appreciate it maybe just a hair more. And that origin story comes from Brian's brother Dennis stating in a 1976 interview that Caroline No was about a girl that Brian was really in love with in high school, and he saw her again years later, and it all came back to him, and he wrote the song. So like, I do appreciate that story. It does elevate the song's appreciation level to a higher plane for me. But yeah, I'm not sure if you can make sense of the ending here for me, where you get the ending with the train tracks and the dogs like barking. Yeah, that's kind of batshit crazy to end off a whole album like this. But as much as I've been kind of like not sure about Caroline No as an ending track, it's a good song in its own right. I do appreciate it, but it's an interesting way to end off the whole album.
So I am relatively higher on this track than you are. This is another song I'll throw in the great song bucket for several reasons. First of all, the way that we go from the orchestral highs of God Only Knows and Wouldn't It Be Nice, at the most optimistic of a love story, to what this is, which is basically realizing that what had been is no longer. And the way that Brian reflects that with just that stripped down bare opening with just the tambourine and the, I want to say, bongo drum that's reverbed so well, is a really great way to close this album as it is. And that Brian is basically conceding that, this idea of love that he has may not be for him after all. Much like he saw the world that way, and I just wasn't made for these times. He's reeling that a little deeper on Caroline No. And much like, see, I will concede this about this song. This is why it did not land in my top three. Because, like you say, it doesn't quite feel very big ending-ish, which I do think is proper, considering a lot of the other elements that Brian has showcased on this album so far. But there is a little bit of feeling that I will, to echo another song we've talked about before, has a little bit of I Want to Be Your Dog syndrome, where it feels like there's some part of the song that's missing. And considering how fully realized a lot of the other songs on this album are, it does feel a little less accomplished than the others. But again, I'm giving Brian Wilson the benefit of the doubt as to say that that's what he was going for, and I think it works very, very, very well as a track. And ironically enough, it was released as a single under Brian Wilson's name, not the Beach Boys, just Brian Wilson, because he is pretty much the only one on this track. And I think it did hit the charts. I want to say like number 32 or something like that. I might be off by a couple digits. But about that ending. Fun fact, Mike Love didn't really like how this album sounded, and he basically thought that the whole shift to melancholic chamber pop that Brian was going for was a knock on the Beach Boys brand. And from what I remember in reading the blurb about it in the 500 Greatest Albums of All Time, basically Mike Love went to Brian and said, "Who is going to hear this shit? The ears of a dog?" And so Brian was like, "All right, you know what? Let's bring in some dogs. Let's bring in some dogs. Let's bring in some cats. Let's bring in some animals. Let's bring in some pet sounds, shall we, to end this album." And that's why you hear this train go by with these dogs and other animals barking at it. And I think that's a brilliant move for two reasons. One, it basically tells Mike Love to piss off, which is never a bad thing. But secondly, much like it did on Pet Sounds and much like it did on You Still Believe in Me, it adds that element of life goes on. You know? Now that the story's over, there's a train going by, there's some pets barking in a field. That's life. And that's the album.
Very much so, man. And with that being said, I'm very tempted to comment on Mike Love just being an absolute, dickhead, and Brian Wilson being like, "Well, hold my beer. You want to be a dickhead? I too can tango at this, man." But we've witnessed that tango. We've journeyed through Pet Sounds and what the Beach Boys had to offer with the record here. And we've had 13 tracks up, 13 tracks are now down, scorecards are filled out, so there's only one thing left to say, man.
We did it.
We did it, man. We went to a petting zoo with the Beach Boys, and we discovered what some pet sounds sound like. I tried to land it. I tried to land that plane there, man. I think I did. I think I did okay there. So, but in terms of ratings and overall feelings, I'm gonna go first if you don't mind.
Go for it.
So, yeah, with this album here, obviously it's highly critically acclaimed. Named the second best album from Rolling Stone out of their 500 greatest albums list of all time. So, it's interesting diving into a record like this with that much acclaim. Like, you almost feel pressure to be like, nope, they're right. Like, this is the good shit. This is that good cushion orange juice, as the kids would say. And just a lot of what this album has to offer. Yes, the lyrical meaning off a lot of the tracks are fairly surface level, but they're universal. You don't really need to go on genius.com to figure out what the Beach Boys were singing about here. You can get that right out of the gate. And I do appreciate that 100%. And then even outside of the lyrics, the songs themselves, I've had different opinions and different feelings about a lot of the tracks off the record, but Brian Wilson was trying to do with this record, I really believe that there's no skips whatsoever off this record. From the highest points off the record, you get God Only Knows, which has deep lyrical meanings, instrumental palettes that are just complex, and just overall a perfect love song to listen to. And then for other moments off the record, a lot of the other tracks that I didn't highlight specifically, with giving it the distinction of it being a top track, you get a lot of interesting nooks and crannies that you can really dive into. And for me, being a musical nerd as I am, I mean, hell, I have a musical podcast with you where we're not sponsored by anything. We've done like 100 reviews at this, 100 episodes at this point. Like I was absolutely just taken back by just the dedication and the creative genius from the Beach Boys and Brian Wilson as a whole throughout the record. So, in terms of an overall rating, I mean, it might be a little bit cliche to say this, but I'm going to give this album a beefy 10 out of 10. I am absolutely loving Pet Sounds here. It definitely deserves all the flowers it's been given throughout its history.
I am very happy to hear that you have given Pet Sounds such high accolades. And fun fact, before I get into my feelings, I mentioned that, and you mentioned in your final review that it did finish number 2 in Rolling Stone's ranking. Funny enough, it has maintained that throughout all 3 of its iterations, in 2003, in 2012, and in 2021. So that is almost 20 years of additional albums that could compete, and everyone's still like, no, Pet Sounds is right up there, man. And you're not going to hear any argument from me, because what really makes this album so great, aside from the obvious, which is the instruments are great, the vocals are great, and everything comes together in just such a beautiful orchestration, is that, like you said, the lyrics are a little surface level, but they're not that surface level when you consider the time. Because 1966 was not a time whenever music of a rock and roll band was considered sad. It was still considered, fun rebel music. But here the Beach Boys decide, especially Brian Wilson, decide, you know what? It's okay to be sad sometimes. It's okay to watch things die, watch life ebb and flow, and watch that to the point where it may reduce to nothing. They, in of itself, sort of flip rock and roll on its head, not just instrumentally, but lyrically and emotionally. And this is where pretty much any type of sad music that were to come after that, the singer-songwriters of the early 70s, or the grunge of the 90s, or the indie rock scene of the 2000s and 2010s, pretty much can have its origins traced back to the bold moves that Brian Wilson took on this album. And again, not only did he prove that sadness and deep emotion have a place in rock music, but it has a place in pop music, and it has the right to sound as beautiful as it possibly can. Like, the fact that such melancholy is produced with such, again, expert instrumentation and expert vocal performances, like, even if you didn't care a damn about Brian Wilson's emotions or even the lyrics at all, musically alone, this album is one of the greatest of all time. Like, it's executed so perfectly. So, step aside, Miss Mitchell. Move your seat over, Mr. Zimmerman. You got company at your table. Because for the only third time in the history of Hey Listen to This, Dealer is showing a pair of 10s. I'm right there with you, man.
Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys gets inducted to the Hey Listen to This Hall of Fame, man. That feels good, man. That feels good. I'm glad that you enjoyed it as much as I did, man.
I'm glad you enjoyed it too, man, because again, like you said, you had not really experienced this album up until this year, so for you to have that same level of emotion, I am very, very happy to hear that.
Yeah, and I feel like one of the things that made me appreciate it so much is like the fact that erase this album from musical history. Like, it never existed, right? And like, if this album were to come out like Friday of this year, like this week here, like, it would still sound incredibly fresh, unique, and that is a testament to its longevity. But in terms of pivoting on over to my next album recommendation, there was one group that I got reminded of listening to, like, Pet Sounds here on the instrumental palette front and like the feel front. So yeah, I'm basically going to go with that group, and that group is Vampire Weekend, and the album itself is Father the Bride. You get a wide instrumental palette, different kind of like song structures. One of my favorite songs off of that album is Harmony Hall. It's one of my favorite, Vampire Weekend songs whatsoever. Great song, great album, easy next album recommendation for me.
And my next album recommendation is pretty easy too. I had to think about it a little bit because there were a few options, but I am just going to make like Paul McCartney and take Pet Sounds and try to top it, which is not an easy thing to do, but if there's an album that comes close, it is an album from McCartney and his fellow four lads, and that is the Beatles and their 1967 album entitled Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. And I landed on that because I was reminded a lot of the musical complexities and oddities that this album has compared to that one. With Sgt. Pepper, you get the sitar Within You, Without You, the cavalcade of carnival sounds you get on Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite. And I don't even think I have to mention A Day in a Life. If you haven't heard that song, do yourself a favor. Take 5 minutes out of your day. But yeah, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band by the Beatles. Easy recommendation based off of the wonderful sounds of Pet Sounds.
So, ladies and gentlemen, and the middle schoolers that are still listening to this episode of Hey, Listen to This, to summarize, our overall consensus rating was pretty easy because we both gave this album a 10 out of 10. I recommend Father of the Bride by Vampire Weekend in terms of a next album recommendation. And Matthew recommends Sgt. Pepper's by the Beatles as a next album recommendation. I'm glad that we went in terms of old school album and a new school album in terms of a next album recommendation. So yeah, what a review, man.
What a review, man. I'm very happy that we came to the conclusions that we did. This is... Again, it is cliche, but cliches exist for a reason. And there's a reason a lot of people say this is one of the greatest albums of all time, because in my opinion, and as it turns out yours, it is. Simple put.
So, we have one more piece of business before we can officially say, ladies and gentlemen, we've done 100 episodes of Hey, Listen to This. We are, I would say... 85, if not 93% complete with this episode here. The last percentage points are basically left to, you, man. Where are we going next with our next review? I know that with the previous review that we did out of your camp, which was Brad Paisley and Who Needs Pictures, you kind of did set the table here for the next review that we're going to be talking about. But for those of you who are listening to us, for the listener out there who's listening to us for the very first time, and basically doesn't want to go check out that Brad Paisley review to find out what that table was, why don't you tell the listener and basically illustrate where we're going next?
So the reason I had picked Brad Paisley for last week's episode. And the reason we'll be talking about this next album next week is because, as we have mentioned several times, this is our 100th full-length episode, but it is our 98th review. So last week was our 99th full-length episode, and next week will be our 99th review. So I decided to pick two albums from the year of 1999. And I gave Ryan the choice to choose between West Virginia or California. He chose West Virginia first. That's why we covered Brad Paisley. We are going to California next. And Ryan, before I reveal what that album is, I'm going to let you have a crack at what you think this album might be. Because you've had a little bit of time to think about it. What do you think we're going to be talking about?
All right, so let me just fact check myself. Okay, so there was one album that came to mind. I don't know if this is what you're going to go with. The album is Californication by the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
So that is a very educated guess, probably the most educated guess you could have made, but it is not the album we are going to be talking about. But we are going to be talking about a band. Yeah, we are going to be talking about a band from California who released an album in 1999. And much like the Red Hot Chili Peppers, this could be considered their biggest one. But we will not be talking about Scar Tissue or Californication or taking things on to the other side. No, rather, we're going to be discussing a few things like whether or not aliens exist, or what our age could possibly be, or all the other small things. So, For those of you who have yet to celebrate Halloween, don your nurse outfits, put on the blue gloves, because we are about to talk about Blink-182 and their 1999 album, Enema of the State.
Let's fucking go! In the name of Zora Mandani, we can do this! Oh my goodness, I'm so excited.
I'm glad you are, man. I had to think about this one because, there's a couple of songs off there that I've really liked, but again, we'll dive into that next week. I'm glad we're gonna be talking about some Blink next week. It's not quite Pet Sounds, spoiler alert, but it is gonna be a fun time.
Absolutely, man, absolutely. And if I can only just sound off this review in a very very appropriate fashion. Sometimes I just after days like today, and after doing such a lovely review with you about Pet Sounds, and how we're basically two dudes talking about music and the way that we do, and just how odd I can be at sometimes with how I phrase stuff. Man, I just feel like I just wasn't made for these times.
No. You were. I'm not sure how, but I know there's an answer.